like to think that I'm your average 20-something-year-old woman. The girl next door, if you will. Navigating through life, figuring out exactly who I am, what I'm doing next, and still sort of believing that it all goes downhill after 30. Being 20-something means that I am, yes, a millennial. Oh, the dreaded millennials. What is it that they say about us? That we're lazy, we're entitled, and oh, how could I forget? That we're ruining the napkin industry. I, on the other hand, would like to categorize us as dreamers. We see big things, we want big things, and we go after big things by any means necessary. And I'm no different. I've always had big, big dreams, and I've worked very hard to fulfill those dreams. From the time that I was a young girl, growing up in this city that I call home, I've always craved success. Sometime during my elementary school years, my teachers determined that my reading level was far too advanced for my grade level. Go figure. This foreshadowed the trajectory of my life because I always made sure to excel and be the very best at any and everything I did. You see, my big dreams told me that excelling would one day lead me to that well-paying job, that big house, that fancy car. The American dream. I went on to a gifted and talented middle school, and then there was high school where I had your pretty typical teenage experience. I got my first real job in high school working at McDonald's, and I saved all my money from that job and got my first car. A 1998 Forest Green Mazda 626. Staying true to who I was, I took the equivalent of college prep classes. Again, with the understanding that I needed to exceed and do well to reach my dreams. Immediately after high school, I went on to college. And like most Americans, I pondered all the ways that I could pay for it. Of course, there was financial aid, but I was lucky enough to have earned a scholarship that funded a significant amount of my college education. After college, there was law school. Now, sometime early on, I developed a bright idea to be a lawyer. If you ask my mom, she'd tell you it was genetics. My maternal grandfather chose the legal profession after serving as a flight sergeant in the British Royal Air Force. He went on to become the first lawyer from his ethnic group in Nigeria and ultimately a judge. I told people for years that I wanted to be a criminal prosecutor, not having a clue what it meant, but it sounded important. So, immediately after college, I went to law school. Now, anyone who's familiar with law school will tell you, in your first year, they scare you to death. In your second year, they work you to death. And in your third year, they bore you to death. Unfortunately for me, law school was also bookended with grief. I was saddened to death. I lost both of my grandmothers. One during my first year, and the second the summer before my last year. Nevertheless, I went on to graduate with both of their legacies propelling me. And I now work as a corporate attorney, fulfilling part of my dreams. So, that's my life thus far. Pretty typical. I follow the trajectory of the American dream. Stay in school, focus on your studies, stay out of trouble, go to college, get a good job, check, 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 and check again. I'm pretty much your girl next door, right? Okay, I have to be honest. I don't think I'm your girl next door, and I don't think I'm typical. I'm a girl with big, big dreams. Dreams that have fueled me and motivated me in every leg of my life. But I'm not just a big dreamer, I'm a dreamer. Dreamer is a word that this country uses for a specific class of people. Dreamer comes from the DREAM Act, a bill that was first introduced in 2001, nearly 18 years ago. DREAM is an acronym for Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors Act. Dreamer is a word that this country uses for undocumented immigrants that were brought to the United States as children. Yes, I am a dreamer. So now that you know that about me, let me walk you back through my life. I told you that I grew up here. I was brought to the United States, flying into New York from Nigeria on January 1st, 1992. I was about 18 months old. I told you that I went to college and that I earned a scholarship, and Lord only knows, had I not earned that scholarship, how I would have paid for college. Because dreamers, unlike American citizens, don't qualify for what most people use to pay for college. The free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, which about 2/3 of American citizens use to pay for college. I remember going to a seminar that my high school hosted for seniors, and at that seminar, school administrators would walk you through the college application process. I remember getting to the end of my application and not quite understanding why I wasn't getting that same successfully submitted message that everyone else was getting. I was told not to fret and that I would receive a follow-up correspondence. Months later, when I finally got admitted to college, I was told that in order to process my financial aid application, I would need to produce a birth certificate. That's when I found out. That's how I found out that I was a dreamer. I told you that in law school I was saddened to death and that I'd lost both of my grandmothers. I never met any of my grandparents, at least not that I had any recollection of. And I grieved not because I lost the only 2 grandparents that I had left on this earth, but because I couldn't attend their funerals. Because you see, if a dreamer leaves the United States for any reason, a vacation, a family visit, a business trip, a funeral, for God's sakes, this country places an automatic 10-year ban on their reentry into the United States. Me going to my grandmother's funerals would mean me losing life as I knew it. So I couldn't. So I didn't. I told you that I stayed out of trouble. And although I've never really been much of a rebel, America is far less forgiving of dreamers than it is of its citizens. Had I had any sort of mark on my record, had I made some sort of dumb decision like most teenagers do, any sort of interaction with police, that could have been the difference between me being deported and me flying under immigration's radar. I sat back and listened on mute as people I interact with daily discuss immigrants, government shutdowns, and walls. I've listened my entire life as people talk about me to me without even knowing. I've been hidden in plain sight and relegated to painful silence all of my life. And let me tell you that, for lack of better words, it sucks to do everything in your life right and still be told by this country that you are not good enough. But unfortunately, my story is only one of 3.6 million. Dreamers are your students. They work to cultivate their minds, to make this country, to make this world a better place. They're your teachers. They educate your children. They're your doctors. They cure your sicknesses, your ailments, your diseases. They're your entertainers. They make the songs that make you laugh and the films and movies that make you cry. They're your soldiers. They sacrifice their lives for you in a country that cannot seem to decide whether it wants them or not. And they're your lawyers. They're me. Opponents always say, well, why don't they just do things the right way? Why don't they just become citizens? And if only it were just that simple. To even begin to qualify for citizenship in the United States, An immigrant has to have an initial legal entry into the United States. America considers me being brought here at 18 months old an illegal entry. Okay, so why don't you just leave and come back and make it legal? The penalty for an initial illegal entry into the United States is an automatic 10-year ban on reentry. So, me standing before you today, if I were to leave at 28, I'd be 38 before I could even consider qualifying for American citizenship. Now, being a lawyer has taught me a little bit about, well, the law. So let's unpack this a bit. In the American legal system, every crime is considered to have two elements: actus reus and mens reus. Actus reus is the Latin phrase for physical act. Mens rea is the Latin phrase for mental intent. The two words, when translated, come from the Latin phrase that an act does not make one guilty unless the mind is also guilty. In other words, in order to have a crime in the American legal system, you must not only commit the act, but you must have the mental intent to commit the crime. This means that by America's own legal standards, dreamers have not committed a crime. And yet, the legal entry requirement punishes all 3.6 million dreamers from a path to American citizenship. Sounds pretty hopeless, right? Dreamers got a glimmer of hope with the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA executive order. DACA was enacted during the 2012 presidential administration. DACA is an immigration policy that provides dreamers with a renewable 2-year hold on deportation and a work permit. There are 7 factors that dreamers must meet to qualify for DACA. Here are a few. Come to the United States before their 16th birthday. That means that sweet 16 that so many American teenagers look forward to, dreamers look forward to it here in America, just like you. We're under the age of 31 as of June 15, 2012, or in other words, born on June 16, 1981 or after. That means if you're a baby boomer, a Gen Xer, or a Zennial, if you were a dreamer, you'd be automatically disqualified from DACA protection. Have completed high school or a GED, have been honorably discharged from the armed forces, or are enrolled in school. That means that I could be sitting in an American college or university, be sitting in American high school, or be sacrificing my life for this country and not get deported, but not be worthy enough for American citizenship. And a fourth, have not been convicted of a felony or serious misdemeanors, or 3 or more other misdemeanors, and do not otherwise pose a threat to national security or public safety. That means 3 or more traffic violations, and I no longer qualify for DACA protection. This factor alone would disqualify 1 in 3 American citizens from DACA protection. Understand that dreamers are held to a standard of perfection that most American citizens aren't held to. And partly because of these stringent requirements, of the 3.6 million dreamers, only about 800,000 are DACA recipients. And recognize that DACA is not a permanent solution. DACA is not a path to citizenship. It is a temporary solution. There are still 3.6 million human lives in a state of limbo. Dreamers don't get to vote. Dreamers are excluded from a host of federal benefits, and yet dreamers pay taxes just like all of you. Now you might say it can't be that bad. There has to be a single solution, and I have to be honest, you're right. For a dreamer like me who isn't seeking asylum from my host home country and who isn't a victim of violence, there is one solution. Marry a U.S. citizen. Now, in the age of women's empowerment, I can't help but to think about those big American dreams. And America wants me to revert back to the archetype of the damsel in distress, saved by the prince, all in the name of American citizenship. Now, I can sit here and throw out the most pro-immigrant arguments. I can tell you that this is indigenous land, that we're all immigrants. I can tell you that no one can be illegal on stolen land. Or I can tell you that 40% of Fortune 500 companies were started by immigrants or their children. But I won't give you a history lesson or a lecture on how immigrants are beneficial to America's bottom line. Because if I have to tell you how immigrants benefit, look, live, and act like you for you to care, then you don't really care. And therein lies our collective illness, the American bystander effect. This country has no concept of synergy or collectivism. The common thread in all mankind lies in our humanity. It should be enough that someone is human for you to care. And not the type of care where you post, hashtag, and tweet, and then go back to your life as normal. I mean the type of care that forces you to mobilize change. One of my favorite poems comes from the Holocaust. It was written by German Lutheran pastor Martin Niemöller. It reads, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." It speaks of Nazi complacency during German rise to power. It's been 7 years since Dreamers got their last glimmer of hope with DACA. Call that politician, let your voice be heard, and demand that a pathway to citizenship be created for Dreamers today. And not a path that has us waiting and sitting and toiling for another 7, 10, 15, or 20 years, but a path that creates immediate change. Because at this pace, many Dreamers have and will live and die in this country without ever having a taste of American citizenship. Understand that the fate of 3.6 million human lives lies in the hands of people that this country deems worthy enough to have a voice. People like all of you. Don't wait until it's too late to do something. Don't wait until it's too late to care. Don't wait until they come for someone you know, someone you love, someone that looks like you. Don't wait until they come for someone like me. Don't wait until they come for the dreamer next door.